Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining here at Unapologetically Progressive. Once again, I am back with another video, and this time we're going to discuss whether or not hate speech is protected speech. Now, the Supreme Court has two rulings in the last 15 years that lays out whether or not hate speech is protected, and we'll get to those in just a minute. Now, hate speech and protected speech have been all in the news as of late, especially since the Kirk assassination, and for good reason. Right? And it all came to a head yesterday with the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel and the Jimmy Kimmel Show, which we'll get into in just a minute. But if there's one thing that I remember about Charlie Kirk, as much as I despised him, as much as I couldn't stand anything he had to say, was that he was a free speech absolutist. That whether or not you had something to say, whether or not he had something to say, you both had the right to say it. Regardless of if it offended him or his speech offended you, you had the right to say it. That was his view on free speech. Over and over again, he had these little debates and these meetups, these in-person discussions with people who utterly disagreed with him, who absolutely despised his political positions. But he let them speak anyway. That's what free speech is, right? Letting other people say things, whether or not it offends you. So Jimmy Kimmel was suspended for using his free speech. Basically, Sinclair Broadcasting threatened ABC that if they did not pull Jimmy Kimmel off the air, that Sinclair would stop broadcasting any and all ABC content on their networks. Because remember, ABC creates the content, and then there's distributors that distribute it. Sinclair was one of those. And Sinclair, basically, what seems to be at the behest of the Trump administration, because of their close ties and the friendship between the Sinclair family and the Trump family, were basically told to put pressure on ABC. At least that's what I have seen in different articles that have been written. But is hate speech protected speech? It's a good question, isn't it? Well, here are two cases where the Supreme Court basically said yes, hate speech is protected speech. You had Snyder v. Phelps, which was a case which I hated the outcome of it, but at the same time, I think they were right. I think it was the correct decision to make in the ruling. But Snyder was the father of a deceased military veteran who had died, I believe, in service to this country. Fred Phelps and his Westboro Baptist Church showed up to protest his funeral, holding signs such as "Thank God for Dead Soldiers," and all their other disgusting signs that the Westboro Baptist Church carries with them, right? But the grieving father had filed a lawsuit, had been awarded $10.9 million by the first the district court, and then the Court of Appeals, the fourth district court of appeals, said no, and wiped out the ruling. And then the Supreme Court stood with the appeals court, basically protecting Westboro Baptist Church right to protest military funerals, holding signs, saying that it was their signs were mostly public, public discourse material, and protecting their right. This was an 8-1 decision. Only Justice Samuel Alito was in the dissent here. All other justices voted, for protecting the Westboro Baptist Church right to free speech. And as bad as I felt the decision was at the time, as mad as it made me, because I felt so bad about that grieving father. But since then, I have realized that sometimes, even if it's painful, even if it's just disgusting to you and super offensive, it doesn't mean they don't have the right to do it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't counter protest. It doesn't mean you can't tell them exactly what you think. But we're not supposed to stop them for doing what they think is right. Even though I completely disagree with everything that is the Westboro Baptist Church. Then we have another case from 2017. Mattel versus Tam. This is one that I don't know as well, but Justice Alito, writing in the majority opinion, says the government cannot prevent speech that expresses ideas that offend, noting that speech demeaning on the basis of race, gender, religion, or religion is hateful, but still protected. And that is what the Supreme Court ruled in that particular case. I don't know exactly what the number was, the vote on that. Let me see. I'm trying to see if I can find the actual vote tally. Um, Basically, it was another 8-1 decision. I believe. Okay, it was basically a unanimous decision. The ninth Justice, Neil Gorsuch, did not participate in this particular hearing, recusing him for whatever reason. So basically, it was upheld by the Supreme Court, basically unanimously, with one person not participating in the hearings. But it was a law. It was Supreme Court had struck down the law because it was banning disparaging trademarks. And so, yes, the Supreme Court has repeatedly now, multiple times, and those are just in the last 15 years that I can find, where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of free speech, even if it's hateful. And I believe the Supreme Court got these cases right. I don't believe we should have the right to tell other people what views they can hold and what they can protest and how they can speak. I don't care if something offends you. Now, there are a few limitations to hate speech. If hate speech gets to the point where it incites violence, just like free speech in general, if your speech incites violence against a group of people or other people, that is not protected speech, right? And there's a difference between saying your beliefs and then trying to write laws that dictate your beliefs to everybody else and trying to call that free speech. That's a total different thing. But when it comes to Jimmy Kimmel, I don't believe he was fired for a just cause at all. Whether or not I liked his content or not, or his style or not, that's not the point. But I've read about a dozen articles and watched about 6 or 7 videos of Jimmy Kimmel since last Wednesday. And at no point did I hear him say anything that should have got him suspended or fired. He didn't incite violence against anybody. Donald Trump has in the last week. But yeah, there are limitations to speech. You like I said, you can't incite violence. You can't be screaming, fire in a crowded theater or something like that, right? But you should be free to say what you want to say. You should be free from government interference and government overreach and censorship, which I believe Jimmy Kimmel is dealing with. I believe Jimmy Kimmel is being forced to be silenced because of Trump's ties to the Sinclair family. Now, Sinclair says that they would withhold allowing ABC content to air on their network, on any of their stations, unless Jimmy Kimmel apologizes. And there's the problem. First off, he shouldn't have to apologize. Secondly, I didn't hear anything that seemed as if he needed to apologize for it. Let me know in the comments what you think about free speech, and do you believe that free speech, even if it offends you, should be protected by the First Amendment, because I sure do. Because I've said a lot of things over the 10 years that I've been on this app, and the 10 years that I have run this YouTube channel. From the days of it being the Big Ranch Show to now it being Unapologetically Progressive. Right? And I've been free to say whatever I want to say, regardless of who it offended and who it upset. And I want to be able to continue to do that. I believe everybody should have the right to do that. So if you support free speech, let me know what you think about it in the comments, what you think about Jimmy Kimmel being fired, and about how Sinclair basically strong-armed ABC, what seems to be possibly at the behest of the Trump administration. Anyways, I'll see you down the road.